So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is a public work session to satisfy conditions of approval for DRH 22-00078 at 8373 West Victory Road. This site is located on the south side of Victory Road, bordered by Trabuco Avenue on the west and Milwaukee Lane on the east. The project includes 301 apartment and townhouse style units and a central clubhouse and outdoor amenity area. And the committee approved this project on April 13th with a condition to return to a future work session to review mechanical equipment and screening, materials, windows, site topography, drainage, and additional color palettes, as well as other design changes. And the committee also requested additional design variation on the west along Trabuco Avenue. The applicants did submit proposed mechanical equipment locations. The flat roof buildings are proposed to have rooftop equipment and a minimal number of louvers on the facades, and the pitched roof townhomes are proposed to have equipment along the fronts on the ground. And there is an existing condition of approval that all mechanical equipment have full height screening. The primary materials are proposed to be fiber cement, plank and panel, stucco, brick veneer, and CMU. The applicants have provided some renderings showing the material applications. And the applicants have updated the designs of the tuck under buildings that reduce a repetitive appearance. So this is the north elevation of the tuck under building 1 facing Victory Road. The previous elevation is on the top and the new elevation's on the bottom. And this is the tuck under building 2 facing Milwaukee Lane on the east, and the previous and new elevation. And you can also see the site topography change is taken into account in this elevation. So the existing site slopes down from the south to the north. And the drawings appear to show underground drainage facilities, and the applicants can address that in their presentation. The applicants do want to request a change to the window condition H, which currently requires a 2-inch window recession or protrusion or 4-inch contrasting trim. On the tuck under buildings, the applicant is showing the 2-inch recession on the brick detail, but not for the stucco or fiber cement. So that is something they'd like to discuss. The applicant has shown 2 color variations that appear to utilize the same colors applied differently to the buildings. The committee should determine if that is okay or if a distinct color palette is required. And then along Trabuco Avenue, the 4-plex design appears to repeat, but use the varied color applications. So the committee should decide if that is sufficient or if additional design variation is needed. And the applicant team is here to present.
If you would state your name and address. Yes. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Doing a solo, just trying to get the mic to the right height. My name is Rob Cottle, principal of Babcock Design. We're based out of Salt Lake City, but we also have a Boise office here at 800 West in the 8th and Main building, Suite 940. And thank you for having us here today. I'm assuming this clicker, does this work for the presentation? Okay, there I can see it. So just wanted to very quickly, I understand we have a short period of time. So what I'd like to do is quickly go through this presentation in about 10 minutes and then leave the remainder of the time for questions for the group, if that's okay. So basically just an update on where we are since we last met. The site plan is pretty much the same in terms of the basic building locations. We have done some changes to the clubhouse, and that design has evolved with the pool and all the amenities. I'll show you some of that here in a minute. Also, as was brought up in the original design review, we had topographic issues that we needed to address. So as we've gone through the project, need to click that way, or
I can click for you too.
there we go. So this is the topo plan. Basically, as you're aware, the site is relatively flat for the kind of the back third, the south third of the site. And then it slopes downward towards Victory Road and gets slightly steeper as you get closer to the road. So what we've done is we've actually arranged the buildings. In a sense, we've terraced them down to follow the natural grade. And the reason being is to not, plane off this site and have a big, tall retaining wall along Victory Road, but also to take advantage of the natural topography and the scale of the buildings, have them be softened by stepping down, because actually the height of the building along Victory Road, when you're back in the middle of the site, you can really only see the top 2 floors. There's that much drop. So in terms of drainage, I'm going to show you the slide, but in a minute, I'm going to have Brandon address that. And this not getting any click action here.
We'll get you.
Yeah.
We'll get you.
All right. Anyway, if you can just go to the next slide. Or I can make a clicking noise. Click. I'm old enough to remember the film strips that had the beep. Let's see if you can just go to slide 3, but we can pick up there. Okay, so this is basically the drainage strategy. I'll let Brandon describe that in detail when we get to that part. But basically, utilizing the way the buildings are laid out and a series of catch basins and drainage strategies to take the water adequately in all the different directions. One of the things that we've evolved, the design has evolved quite a bit since we last met. One of the there's several site amenities in the green space or the negative space between the buildings. This is a little plaza between the 2 tuck under buildings, kind of near the northeast corner of Milwaukee and Victory Road. So there's quite a bit of topographic change, as well as the two buildings have a break in them. So we've created a nice interior plaza with amenities for the folks that live there. And then at the clubhouse, this is really the centerpiece of the whole development. When you come into the development, the clubhouse is going to be very prominent. It will house gym functions, all the typical sort of community type functions that you see in a multifamily development, as well as a pool. There is in kind of the magenta color. This magenta color here is a playground, children's playground, and then separated with some landscaping. We have also a fenced in dog park for large dogs and small dogs. There's barbecue pits and other sorts of things. And amenities for all the folks who live here. So as we've gone through the design, you've seen a lot of these renderings, but I wanted to talk about these in a little more detail. We've really put a lot of effort into making the massing of all of the buildings more interesting. There's a lot of horizontal relief. There's a lot of vertical change. There's a lot, you see that we've changed parapet lines. This one's a little bit higher than this. And we've also added this prominent corner feature that really shows it's really a formal entry. This isn't really the entry that folks are going to use, because most of them are going to come from the backside, but from the street presence, the sense of entry and that anchor on the corner is very prominent. Also, the horizontal relief of the way all of these bays pop out. We're trying to create that sort of city street sort of repetition where there's breaks, there's strong shadow lines, and trying to keep it very simple and clean. This is just a close-up version of the same thing, kind of showing a little more detail, the variety of materials with the vertical cement board, also some masonry, and then this is a honed white block. And then you've got some bronze anodized metal around the top, and then of course the darker windows. really adds a lot of character to the project. So as you look along the Victory Road elevation, you see just the scale of the, the scale of the main building, building 1. You can kind of see the building 2 receding away, and then the start of the townhomes, which then turn the corner and go down Trabuco. On Milwaukee, this is kind of indicative of the typical way the site is working. We have the townhomes towards the back of the development, and then building 2 and building 1. We've actually stepped building 2 an entire level to take into account the grade change and to make that work. So we didn't have huge retaining walls, but it also is much more respective of the topography. This elevation is diagrammatic to show the two different color schemes of the townhouses along Trabuco. We really are trying here with all the architectural forms of this project to keep everything very simple, and it's really honest architecture. It's very straightforward. We're trying to keep traditional, modern, residential scale and forms. Obviously, the buildings that face Trabuco are facing an existing residential neighborhood. We're trying to respect that scale and the type of buildings that are across the street, with the idea that as you get farther into the street, into the development and more to the north along Victory Road, you then transition into a higher density, almost slightly more urban sort of scale and density. This is the interior shots of building number 1. And then this showing how the building is stepping down and accommodating that topography. Just and another view from the other way. On the inside, there's actually the monitor doesn't show it very well, but there's a series of stepped retaining walls and a stair that comes down that makes this transition work with a nice planted area, so that these lower units look out to a nice garden and a nice planted area, and it's not right up against a retaining wall. We've intentionally pulled that away from the building to create a much more pleasant outdoor buffer between the building and the actual hardscape. We also have the 8 and the 12 plexes on the interior. These are obviously, this is a more dense, more urban sort of feel. We're going for a modern, clean look again. They're back-to-back units. So we've got 8 and 12 plexes where they're either, they're six wide back-to-back or 4 wide back-to-back. And again, using similar color palettes, utilizing the dark and the light to create some shade and shadow, as well as some plane change, the nice dark brick at the base, and the punched balconies that create some very distinctive shadow lines. This is a little closer up view of the townhomes along Trabuco. They're much more straightforward in terms of their architectural expression. Again, like I mentioned before, what we're trying to do here is to respect the scale and the vernacular of what's across the street, and try to differentiate between the two by doing different color schemes where we alternate this white element with a more of an olive tone element. This is the actual street. This is a street side, or excuse me, this is street side elevation, where you see you have the nice porches with an overhanging roof form. And again, the contrast between the different materials and the colors to give some more contrast between the two. And then this is just another view of one of the 4 plexes, showing how the garage side with landscaping, you've got very straightforward gabled forms, the nice clean punched openings, and then the light and the dark to modulate to create depth and interest. Looks like I doubled up on slides. That are going the wrong way. So as was mentioned, we are asking for some consideration, a departure as it's defined in the design guidelines on the 2-inch window requirement. As was mentioned in the briefing, we have a variety of window reveals, and that's entirely dependent on the material that the building is being clad with the type of window we're using. A brick facade will force the window back, the thickness of the brick. And the same thing will happen relative to whatever the thickness of the material, whether it's a cement fiberboard or whether it's a stucco product. It's the thickness of that that will be, which will dictate the depth of the window. In the design guidelines, it does say that the departures will be considered where buildings employ other distinctive window or facade treatment that adds a sense of depth in the facade and or visual interest to the building. And I added this here that was an example of where you have a case where these windows are not recessed, but the use of wide contrasting framing, small ledge, bay windows, balconies, and brick add variety, depth, and interest. We believe that we've met the intent of this departure requirement and would ask your consideration on that. Like I said at the beginning, we've put a great deal of effort into really creating a composition of buildings that work very well together and have a significant amount of shade, shadow, and visual interest. And then finally, this was just you saw that other drawing. This is a typical roof plan. We only have rooftop units on the two big buildings and the back-to-back townhomes. They are quite short, relatively speaking. I put a dimension on there. I believe it's like 4'1" from the curb. And the way we've designed the parapets on the building, we're utilizing the parapets to conceal utilizing the parapet height, I should say, to conceal the mechanical units. However, with the residential units, the townhomes that are along Tribuco, we're taking the same strategy that you would take with a typical residential home, where the compressor is ground mounted on a pad and is screened with landscaping rather than adding a fence. It seems that when it's down on the ground, if you put it on the ground and add a fence around it, you're almost calling more attention to it than if you kind of put it behind the building and screened it in a typical way. This is the palette of materials we're suggesting. They're all earth tones, kind of greens, browns, kind of a deep olive color, and two forms of masonry. We do have asphalt shingles as well as some standing seam roof for the smaller awnings and some of the dormers, and then two complementary colors of stucco as well. So I believe that's the end of the presentation. So we'd love to take your questions and comments.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I've got a fair amount to say about this. I honestly, I appreciate time and effort spent in refining a design. I think it's always good that we are in a very iterative profession that is considerate of the process. That said, I think that you honestly had a slightly more refined looking piece to begin with. And I think some of the changes that have been made for the sake of, breaking up horizontal massing and, listing off the list of things that are in our design guidelines. I think they've actually detracted from the project. You had a very, very satisfying rhythmic facade before, and now I think it's somewhat of a jumble. I think that with a development that is as large and with as many different varieties of units in there, it's it's almost too much of an oversimplification to have this few colors and this few materials, particularly along the street sides that are across from existing neighborhoods. We've got 3 materials or 2 materials and 3 colors. It just really makes it feel very monotonous. And I'd like to see, even just variations on your existing color scheme. Take one of those olive masses and go a shade darker, take another one and go a shade lighter. Just bring in some variety to it that adds to this, simulation of a true residential feel, and not just kind of a copy paste townhouse. I appreciate the variety of window treatments. I think that is appropriate. I won't push back on the kind of the flush window within your stucco treatment, but I'd like to see a little bit more refinement of the masonry openings in particular. I know that it's completely possible to build an opening with a steel ledger that holds just a typical running bond, but for those of us that understand how a brick is set and laid and traditionally handled, an opening like that would have a soldier course flat beam over the flat arch over the top of it. And, let's just refine this design a little bit further in terms of the way that we detail these buildings. I'm always disappointed to see asphalt shingle just in black. We actually cited this project when it first came through for having a great approach to TPO white roof to reduce urban heat island effect. But I think we're kind of counterbalancing that by just using the most dark and absorptive material and roofing right there. So, some of this stuff sounds like it's personal preference, but I just think that there's a little bit more jazz can be put into this, and it would really add a lot to the overall composition. But I'm sure that some of my fellow board members might disagree, and I'd love to hear it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Actually kind of in agreement with some of the stuff, specifically the townhomes. I mean, the multifamily, I think, they kind of are what they are. It's a larger, more of a monolithic type of building. The townhomes themselves, I guess when I'm looking at a townhome for color scheme, I'd rather see individual units have a little bit different color rather than that much variation within the same unit. More along the lines of what you'd see with a typical single family home. There are some more modern homes that do bring in some wood and other types of materials to create interest. I think like a corner unit, like the one closest to Maple Grove and Trabuco, that probably serves well for the design because it kind of reflects that Milwaukee, that anchor tower on the multifamily. But as you go down Trabuco, I feel like, to really differentiate the units, it helps if each unit itself has a different color, rather than having within the same unit, part of it white, part of it brown. To me, it kind of pushes it more towards multifamily than the single family nature of a townhome. So it kind of is in agreement with sort of the simplification of that. And I think that's what you guys are going for. I like the sort of modern townhome sort of style that I feel like this is lending itself to. That's kind of, I appreciate all the other stuff that you guys have done. The grading looks great. I think the stepping of the buildings really hits the mark with what we were looking to see. And the courtyard and landscaping, I think, has been improved upon. Those are kind of my comments, just focusing more on the single family nature of it. So thank you.
Any other comments? I'll give you my 2 cents worth, and I'm going to differentiate a little bit. I rather like what you've done. I think a lot of these housing projects have lots of colored variations or whatever, and we've created sort of a little bit of a Disneyland effect where we're trying to be everything to everybody all in one block instead of just a nice, clean, subtle approach with a slight change in materials, which I personally like the way it appears, and again, people are going to have one taste level or another. This has a nice European feel to it. When I saw your elevations, I'm thinking, well, I'm looking at something I would see in Sweden or that kind of thing. And I appreciate it. I think it was quite well done. So for me, I'm good with it.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify?
Sure.
When I say a different color for the townhomes, I don't want you to pick a different color for every single one of them, right? Like a rhythm and a pattern of that. I just personally feel like it breaks it up a little too much within the individual unit. So that's kind of, And-
Just by way of clarification, so rather than changing a building has one color scheme and the other one has a contrasting, you're talking about differentiating units. So you might have a color change within one building, but between units so that you can clearly see one unit versus the other.
yeah, just
correct?
because then someone, when they arrive to their house or a guest arrives, they're not looking at
Yeah,
which is the door. Because if you have a door for one unit that's the same color as the other half of the other unit, then it might cause a little confusion, I guess, visually.
Sure.
And I also wanted to add, I don't really have a problem with the window departure either. I think it's appropriate. I personally don't necessarily agree that putting a 4-inch piece of trim around a window does much for a design. So
Any other comments? Yes.
I tend to agree with the chairman's comments here. Just gotta get my voice going. You've come a long way. It's a large project, and as I was looking at it, I was trying to put myself in one of the units and trying to figure out after a night on the town when I came home, would I ever find my unit in there?
you might have taken an Uber then.
And so I hope there's somebody out there that can guide me to that. But I'm sure that there'll be probably building naming or signage or lighting or other things that will help one building numbers or something that get an individual to their particular building.
Yeah, there's a whole branding and wayfinding aspect that we're not to yet. We're late in design development, if you will. So we are still working on the details of the project.
Yeah.
But the branding we're trying to create a community here with this project, and having folks, whether they're in the townhome or the back-to-back row houses or the apartment buildings, all feel part of the same community, even though we're trying to create a setting that creates a wider range of demographic options as well as financial options with housing types. So that how we tie that all together and make it clear for those who visit and those who live there is very important.
Yeah. I do like the mix of units and what you've done there. When I was in your line of work, it was always easy to start making projects more complicated and detailed and fussy. And that's what I kind of see in a lot of these larger developments. And as you travel out to Harris Ranch or something like that, there just seems to be, you open a book of samples and you start throwing little pieces and parts of materials on the building. And I'm going, this doesn't make sense. To me, it doesn't have any cohesiveness. I mean, I guess they're trying to make things individual, but to me, it creates just visual clutter. So I think if you can take pieces and parts of what Ryan has said and what the others have said here, and I think there's just some minor tweaking that could be done. I'm very comfortable where you've come on the project.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Caitlin, didn't you have some photos or some images you wanted us to look at about the schemes? Can you go back to those slides?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Committee Member Aguilar. think it was this slide shows the two variations they currently have.
So my comments to this, the fourplex color scheme caught my eye, not in a good way. Just because I personally don't care for all the white or the lighter color there in the center. I like how it's more broken up on the threeplex color scheme. And I guess my only comments to you would be, I don't know if there's a way, I like the materials. I like the textures that you've selected. Maybe there's another scheme that you can incorporate into the whole project and tie it in somewhere in combination with breaking up the individual units. The asphalt shingles, I don't have an issue with those. It seems appropriate for this type of roof. I like how you have the metal on the patio covers there and it breaks that up. I guess my biggest takeaway for you is, I think, is if we can introduce another appropriate complementary color scheme to kind of break up the entire development a little more and incorporating kind of everybody's parts and pieces of everyone's comments here. And I think it could be really nice. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So where do we leave this at the end of the day in terms of motions or commentary?
Mr. Chair, committee members, you can add conditions. You can modify that window condition if you would like.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Caitlin, is that? She's in the middle. So when you talk about adding a condition, I guess we would just talk about like the additional color scheme, but we don't necessarily need them to come back to another work session. And I feel like seems like we're all comfortable enough that, and the progression has been made that I think that it demonstrates that you can get that made and allow staff to do that review on it.
I guess that would be if whatever motion we have in front of us, if the motion says we would want them to come back or not,
Sure.
would be included in that motion.
I guess I'm just trying to gauge the
Going through your,
opinion of
Gotcha.
the committee and how to make a less wordy motion.
well, I'm going to ask, if I could interrupt you while you're thinking about that motion, I'll ask you a question. Do you feel like what you're hearing from us gives you good guideline? Are you confused? Is it something you feel like you've got enough feedback that you can address it in a meaningful way?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. No, your comments have been very helpful. Thank
Okay.
you.
It felt like we were giving you two sides of a coin here and you're trying to figure out how to do the edge. All right, I think we're probably ready for a motion at some point here.
Mr. Chair, and I
Yes.
guess I would also ask if we have it, so it goes back to staff. Does staff feel comfortable with all of our parts and pieces and comments?
Mr. Chair, committee member Aguilar, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
was there a suggested motion slide that we could maybe use as at least a template?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
committee member Erstad, I've got it right here. If you want me to take a stab.
If I could ask just one quick question.
Yep.
On the color. So I heard, I guess the only competing information, not necessarily conflicting, but are we talking about another scheme that's a completely different set of colors? When we're talking about variation, are we talking about just more variation with the colors palette that we're currently suggesting? Because I think that's an important distinction that I'd like to understand, just so that as we proceed forward, we know what we're dealing with.
What I think I heard, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I heard them say things like take a darker shade of some of the scheme colors you got there, so you have some different hues instead of different colors. So that would be one approach. And then I also heard different colors completely. So for me, it's up in the air. My personal preference is to stay with the hues you've got and just add a little bit more tonality to it, and so that it feels like there's more variation without introducing reds and blues and things that don't belong in keeping this clean.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I think that the clarification would be that maybe the addition of a third, because right now you've got the two siding colors, correct?
Mhm.
I think it sounds like the hope for was a third color of siding to be shuffled into your existing combinations.
Just a
Not-
complementary color that goes with the existing palette we're showing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
Right. So, Mr. Chair.
yes.
I would move to approve the work session drawings dated received August 2nd, 2022 and September 6th, 2022 per the findings contained in the work session memo for the hearing dated September 14th, 2022 and the work session discussion with a revision to original condition of approval H stating that the window treatments shall be per the details presented at the work session based on the materials in which the windows are placed,
Bravo.
as well as an additional condition to provide a third color within the palette that is complementary to the colors shown during the work session.
And have we added enough about staff review? Did you get
Oh,
that?
and the revised drawings shall be reviewed and approved by staff
Is that prior to building permit application?
prior to building
Okay.
permit application, yes.
So coming back with some revised renderings that show that third siding color and how we're integrating that, is that a sufficient?
Yeah, and that would just, yes, that would just go to staff.
Okay.
You won't have to come back in front of us.
That's
Okay.
assuming we pass this motion. Do I hear a
Okay.
second?
Second.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No problem. Any comments on the motion?
I look forward to seeing this project built.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and call a roll.
Simple,
I,
DePaula,
Aye.
Rudine,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And we will move to the Table Rock room now. Right, Mr. Chair, I believe we can get started.
Okay, I would like to call the September 14th, 2022 Design Review Committee to order. Christina, please call the roll.
Simple,
here,
DePaula,
Here?
Rudine,
Here.
Marsh, Aguilar,
Here.
Zuckerman, Erstad,
Here.
5 present, 2 absent.
At this time, I would take a motion on the August 10th, 2022 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would move for approval of the Boise City Design Review Committee hearing minutes of August 10th, 2022 as submitted by staff.
Second.
the first and second, and Christina, will you call the roll?
Simple,
I,
DePaula,
Aye.
Rudine,
I'll recuse since I wasn't here.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Now we'll switch to the agenda, and I'll note that item number 2 has been removed from the agenda. It has been withdrawn. And this evening there are, let's see. So we only have one item that's a deferral. Two.
1 and 5.
Oh, one. Okay, with all the print. All right. There are 2 items up for deferral. The first item is DRH 2100376, construction of a new approximately 1 million square foot warehouse and distribution center with 98 truck docks and associated site improvements on property in the pending M1D zone. Is there any member of the audience wishing to speak to this item who cannot make the October 12th deferral date? Seeing none, the second item up for deferral is item number 3, correct?
5.
Mr. Chair, number 5.
Number 5. 3 is the one we're going to hear. Is item number 5, DRH 2200307, construct a new 14-story hotel with structured parking and related site improvements in a C5DD zone. And again, is there any member of the audience wishing to speak to this item that cannot make the deferral date of October 12th? Seeing none, I would take a motion on the deferrals.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we defer item DRH 21-00376 and item DRH 22-00307 to the October 12th committee meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Christina, will you call the roll?
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Ruthine,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
What's that?
3 was a consent.
Oh, okay. That's it. That's where I got confused. Let's see. The first item we're considering for tonight's consent agenda is DRH 220028. Item number 3, construction of a new 2-story garage with living space on a substandard lot of record in an R1C zone. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval? Yes. Let the record show that the applicant is in agreement. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item? Seeing none, this item will be moved to the consent agenda. And since that's the only item on the consent agenda, I would take a motion on that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of item DRH 22-00280 with all the terms and conditions contained within the staff report.
Second.
Christina, will you call a roll?
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Ruthine,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
The first item to be heard tonight is item number 4 on the agenda, DRH 2200292. Construct a new traffic operations center consisting of 4 buildings totaling approximately 67,000 square feet and related site improvements in an M1D zone.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll be recusing myself from this item. My husband's a principal at CSHQA.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and community members. My name is Rachel Farrell. I'm a design review planner for the city of Boise. And before you is the project DRH 22-00292, located at 4330 East Franklin. This project is located on East Franklin Road on the border with the city of Meridian in a light industrial zone surrounded by similar industrial uses. The approximately 7.74 acre site is mostly vacant except for a single family dwelling and some surrounding industrial structures. There is a middle school that exists on the other side of the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way, and the northern part of the property contains a drainage pond. The site consists of 5 parcels, which would be consolidated under a separate action. The project would construct 4 new buildings totaling approximately 67,000 square feet. The building facing the street would serve as the traffic operations center for Ada County Highway District. And the buildings towards the rear would serve as warehouse and shop uses to support employees. As part of the project proposal, a new industrial collector along the west side of the site would be constructed to support ingress and egress to the site, along with providing future connection to the Lanark Street extension project. The right-of-way would be landscaped with trees and turf, and detached sidewalks are proposed along the new Lanark Street collector and along Franklin Road. A total of 85 parking spaces are provided, with 4 accessible and 4 bicycle parking spaces. And Boise Pathways Master Plan identifies a planned share use path segment along the northern part of the property, which the applicant plans to dedicate a public easement for future construction. The buildings would be constructed to a maximum height of 30 feet, which would fall beneath the 55-foot height limit for the M1D zone. The massing would be appropriate for this location, and the varying roof lines and modulation would help to avoid a boxy style typical of industrial buildings. Shed roof lines and awnings and fenestration on the warehouse and shop buildings provide some design interest and avoid blank walls. And the neutral color tones, wood accents, and pops of dark gray are typical of a modern style and would overall be appropriate for this building and the location. So this is staff's presentation, and we would recommend approval with conditions. Myself and the applicant are available to answer any questions. I believe the applicant is available online. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, I'll turn it over to the applicant. If they're online, if they would state their name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jim Otradovsky. I am an architect and principal at CSHQA, overseeing this project. Our address is 200 Broad Street, Boise.
I guess at this point, Jim, I'm asking you if you have anything to say regarding the project.
Thank you. We have reviewed the conditions proposed by staff with the client, and they are in agreement with the conditions being proposed by city staff, recommending approval. No opposition to the conditions being proposed.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just had a question about, there's a condition E that talks about if transmission lines run along the right of way on Franklin Street. It looked like in the site plan that it indicated that there was overhead power. I'm just wondering if that had been determined, just so that we know whether that will be a 10-foot wide planter strip with class 1 trees. If that's been updated, it looks like we're asking them to update the site plan for that multi-use path. So I wanted to see if that had been done, because it did also look like there was a pedestrian connection shown from the street to the building already. So maybe Mr. Otradovsky or staff can answer that.
We have not had a chance to review that and determine whether that modification would occur. However, it was determined that that situation does occur, that modification would be acceptable to provide the clearance and maintain that connection.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I also had another question. In looking, and Rachel, I don't know if you can pull up the elevations again. I was looking at the form of the building, and I just wanted to see mostly that east elevation on the front building. It looked like maybe there was some clear story windows within, yeah, kind of that upper, is that the north elevation? And I'm assuming that that's just to help bring a little bit more light in from the north into that space.
Yes, those windows are either along the circulation sign and were included to provide daylighting into what could be an otherwise kind of long and boring space. There also are a couple of larger occupancies within the building that will have higher ceilings, and we wanted to bring natural light into those spaces as well.
Great. I just wanted to ensure that there wasn't just some added roof lines to comply with design review and that, but I mean, that's why I was making the assumption it was function over just form. So I appreciate the clarification.
Any more questions for the applicant? Seeing none, are there any members of the public that would like to testify online? Seeing none, I'll close the comments and turn it over to the panel for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This might be more of a personal preference issue, but just kind of looking at the elevations of the building, it seems like there's kind of just a lot of material variation for the sake of material variation. I think that it's all right for a building to communicate what it is. Obviously we don't want everything to be a plain rectangle with a couple windows punched into it, but it seems to me like some of the adornment on this was just done for the sake of adorning it. I don't necessarily disagree with any of the material choices or anything like that. I think all told, it's a pretty handsome approach. I just think there's kind of a little bit of a lack of coherence to some of the way that those treatments were applied.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I guess I want to confirm with committee member Erstad, are you wanting to revise any of the conditions or add any conditions about like consolidating the materials into certain areas, or I guess just to understand the direction you're going?
Mr. Chair, I think, not to talk for the sake of talking, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that when we see a project, it's almost always kind of midway through the design phase. And I think it's useful for us to give feedback as the design gets further refined, not necessarily to say that we want to see this again. I think that it's well on its way to being a fully realized and a perfectly acceptable addition to our community, our built environment. I just think that it's worth pointing out maybe some, if not theoretical differences we might take with it, but just say I think that this is a particular point that might benefit from a little more massaging. And I don't want to waste anyone's time here, but I just think that obviously I think it's worth saying.
Okay. Mr. Chair and committee members, I guess I just wanted to clarify that you weren't looking to, because I kind of had a direction that I felt, and I think I agree with you. It was more of just a suggestion to look at it as it gets to construction documents versus not us having to look at it again, but I wanted to make sure you didn't want to add any conditions.
No, I don't think it's necessary to add conditions. I just think that we shouldn't necessarily just take what we've seen and not provide feedback.
I agree. So
Sounds like we're at a point where if there's no more discussion, somebody'd have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would move to approve DRH 22-00292 as recommended in the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommended conditions of approval noted in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Christina, call the roll.
Simple,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Rudin,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
That's the last item. I think we are adjourned. Thank you.